There we go.
Whew, that seems like a big challenge. So maybe I'll have to restart this after we get done with this because I don't know what that was. So anyway, so good morning. Good morning. This has been interesting. Trying to get online has been kind of interesting this morning, but we're here.
Yes.
So thank you for your patience, Stephanie, and everybody. Um, so this thing of habit and how how you break a habit. My grandmother, I was telling Stephanie before I got online with you guys. I was telling Stephanie that my grandmother had bucket seats in her car. She had a Buick. She always drove Buicks, and she had bucket seats even before bucket seats was a thing. And when I would get in the car with her, my grandmother, the way she drove is that she used her left hand, and her right hand she would put over on the other seat, which is the seat when I was riding with her, that she wanted to always put her hand in the seat. Good morning, Winnie.
Good
She
morning.
always she always wanted to put her hand in the seat. And I was thinking to myself, when I'm in the seat, it's my seat. And I wanted to scoop my butt over so on the side of the seat so she couldn't put her hand over there in the seat. Because this was, when I'm there, it's my seat. But it was a habit that she had, that she couldn't drive without having, so she would just be like, move your butt over. I'll be like, because I didn't want her hand over there. And it was just so interesting how I could recognize that and want to battle against that as a kid, and not recognizing that we all have habits that that give us some kind of level of comfort or whatever
Tells
that.
our brain that we're safe.
Yeah. And so so if your habit is, and I get why people have problems when they're forced to make changes in their life, is because now all of a sudden your pattern is interrupted.
Mm-hmm.
And I am one that likes to interrupt my own patterns anyway. You know, I don't mind, but breaking the habit of sleeping until 8 o'clock was one of those things that last year I did. I had to break that habit. And I remember how tough it was, especially for the first couple of weeks. And it's so easy to fall back onto old things if you allow yourself to.
It's
But
familiar. It starts to feel familiar. It's like, oh yeah, I missed this.
yeah. So I mean, so there are so many things, and once you, like, say for instance, back at the, well, we just started this new year. Once you've made up in your mind that you've got that you're switching something, and you go back, there's something that tells you, yeah, I'm not, this is not,
Mm-hmm.
this is not, whether it's something as simple as eating some sugar that you had told yourself that you're
Mm-hmm.
not going to do. There's what do you catch yourself. You catch yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And the body will tell you too with sugar. The body feels like you've been hit by a Mack truck. Well, that's my experience. When
Mm-hmm.
I've eliminated sugar and then brought it back, it's like I've been out drinking.
Well, yeah. So it's just figuring out, how to stay in your new normal, uh,
Mm-hmm.
or to create a new normal and then stick to it without having that feeling of I gotta go back for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm. And it's also important to make sure you have grace with
Mm-hmm.
yourself, because a lot of times if people come from a place of shame and judgment, when they fall off, they just be like, "Oh, forget it," you know, and then they just go back to what they know, and so please have grace with yourself and know that the body is the scorekeeper and it wants what it wants. Doesn't mean that it's right what it wants.
Right.
Just because I want it don't mean it's right for me.
And and I always, one of the things I tell people is I ask myself, who running this? Is it my body? Is it the tail wagging the dog or the dog wagging the tail? Who's running this? I have to tell my little dog that all the time too. Who's running this? And if I'm running it, then I need to be about the business of actually running it, because sometimes you do fall off and lose track of what it is that you're supposed to be doing. I get that. So
Mm-hmm.
so yay. You know what? Good morning, Ruth.
Good morning, Ruth.
Challenge. Yes. Good morning. Um, so today we are hopping back into this, and I think, and wait a minute, let me tell you this too. Yesterday I did this talk on here about Mary and Martha, and it was so interesting because the reason why I got on to talk about Mary and Martha was because this one book that I'm reading, this author that I've been reading, the Nandi Okofor, she, in all of her stories, it seems like shea butter occupies a big place. And
Okay.
there is another author that I read, and she was talking about she doesn't have any place that she sits on a regular basis, not at her desk, not in her bedroom, not in her kitchen, that shea butter ain't within arm's reach of her. She's like, she keeps her some shea butter, even she got shea butter that goes in her purse or whatever. And so they always talking about this shea butter. And so it made me think about, I was in the shower and it came to me about Mary sitting at Jesus's feet, and they were talking about they was putting ointment on, and that the smell of the ointment filled the house, right? Whether it was called oil or ointment or what's the other words that they use for stuff like that? Anyway, they had all, depending upon what book you're reading out of, they call it something. They don't just say he was lotioning his feet. It's like, they were putting something on their feet. And Judas, it said, was talking about, why we could have sold
Wasting that
that.
oil.
We could have sold that, bomb. We could have sold that stuff for some money. And Jesus was like, because here you got Martha over here fussing, and you got Judas over here fussing, and Mary is putting it in her hair and on her feet and all of this stuff. And I'm sitting up there like, that darn shea butter. That's the thought that came
That's
in
what
my
came to
mind.
you.
But the other thing is that I thought about how often I have occupied the space of Martha, but also occupied the space of Mary. And depending upon where you are in your life, giving yourself grace, whichever position you choose. If you choose to be the one serving and feeling like you're working hard and putting yourself out there, and nobody's appreciating you, nobody's seeing you, and this heifer over here sitting down there humming and listening to him while she's massaging her feet, and I'm up here busting my butt. I have been in both of those positions, right? And so I guess, I don't know, is it just what chapter you're in, or what you allow yourself to do, but it feels like I've occupied both.
Yeah. I've been a Martha, but not a Martha where I've looked at other people and said, well, why don't they have to do that? I've been a Martha in a space of all this work I'm doing. Why can't I get to this achievement? Why can't I get to the space of sitting down?
So wait a
That's
minute,
always.
you never like when you even when you were a kid, you never been like,
No,
so
I was.
I'm gonna tell you, because my brothers, I didn't understand why my brothers don't have to wash dishes. Why do I have to wash dishes and they don't? Right? It wasn't so much about, my sister and I, because I felt like, well, my sister didn't have to cook. I had to cook, but my sister didn't.
Yeah.
Because my sister didn't know how to cook at the time. She has since like learned and surpassed. But when we were kids, she was in the majorette, she was in the marching band, she was Miss Cutesy, and she didn't have to do some of the chores that I had to do.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. No, I was a firstborn.
oh,
So,
okay, okay.
and so therefore it was just what I was supposed to do. I had a very young mother. So my grandparents and I had step grandparents. I didn't know were step grandparents. I didn't know they were step grandparents until I turned 18. But so consequently, I was firstborn. We were always at my father's parents' house. And so dutifully, I was the person who did all the work. And I just did it because I want to make people happy. So I did. I did it. I didn't care. My sister didn't do nothing. It wasn't until I came home in 2018 that my sister said, I just realized that you were Cinderella.
Oh wow, what a
Because we were living here in the house that we were pretty much raised in together.
uh-huh.
And and it does. I mean, epigenetics is a real thing, and when you are in that space, that energy, her being here for the many years that she was here before I came back home, she got an opportunity to sit in these spaces, in these rooms, and remember what childhood was like and things of
Mhm.
that nature. And so when I came home in 2018, she was like in tears, like you were Cinderella. And it didn't feel like that to me. It
Okay.
just felt like I had responsibility. And I don't know, it just felt like I was asked to do something and I did it. And one thing about my responsibility as a kid at my grandparents' house, I never felt like I didn't do it right. But
Mm.
at home with my mom, I always felt like I didn't do it right. But at my grandparents, I never felt like I didn't do it right. So I was eager to do stuff, eager to clean the tub, eager to wash the dishes, eager to just eager. And it was just so strange. So I never had that, why can't they get up and do it? Because my mom was clever enough to assign us different chores. So if I had the kitchen, my sister had the living room.
Mm.
So it wasn't like one person
Living
did it.
room ain't nearly as hard as the kitchen. I go
But we
back.
all took turns. I mean, she was wise enough to have like, this is your week, this is your week. So
Well,
there was not a lot of, except for the outside, nobody did the yard but me. Um,
you
I
know,
was always responsible for that.
and then my brothers always did the yard, but that was only a weekend thing. And I was Monday through I was every day. I was on every day. And so as we got older though, as we got older, and there seemed to be some prestige in being able to cook. All of my brothers started cooking,
Hmm.
and then everybody wanted to be competitive about it. My hamburgers are better than your hamburgers. My this is better than your that. It was, and so now all of my brothers, have been like outstanding as far as cooking is concerned. I mean, just crazy over the top good. And my sister, all of us now can cook, but starting off, it felt like it was all me. And
That's the
yes,
story
I
of my
did.
life.
I did have that energy of like, why they get to go do such as I felt like Cinderella, but of course I was a middle child. When he was an only child, yes, I know you were an only child, and your mama wasn't no joke. Her mama was no joke.
Yeah. So
So
yeah. I just waited. I just look forward to the day where I could sit. And that's still a longing. That's interesting that you should bring that to the forefront because it is still a perceived longing that I don't have an opportunity to sit and be still.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And Winnie's mother, I tell you, Winnie used to talk about stuff like, you know how you ever see people who have to clean the house and the house already clean?
yeah, me.
I just always, I just always wonder about that. Like, it look clean to me. What you doing? Why you gotta, why you gotta do that?
Yes, yes. Where I come from.
Oh, I think that's my problem now. Just did that. But I don't have to answer to nobody. Too.
Yes, my Lord. Yes, I do know.
People be signing tasks, and it's like, uh, I guess before it gets dirty, you got to do it. Good
Yeah.
morning, Erica.
Some kind of maintenance, I guess, because you clean house all week, but then Saturday morning,
Oh
the
my God.
music go on and it's deep cleaning
Yeah.
every Saturday.
Oh my gosh. And then the times you got to clean out the window sills, and you're like, who
Window sills or
did the window
baseboards.
sills? I tell you, I just so yes. So when I was reading and refamiliarizing myself with that, the balm and the massaging of the feet and all of that stuff, I was thinking about it from that standpoint, and Jesus saying, she has chosen the best part,
Mhm.
like, leave her be. This is what she has chosen to do. And I probably would have, if it was my feet getting rubbed, I would have said the same thing. You better leave this girl alone. She in here massaging my understanding, right? The feet are a necessary part of our being, and she was working on his feet, and so not only let her groove with this, let me groove with this, and stop putting all of this extra energy out here. The poor will be with you always, right? And so, I was just having my moment with that, as I pulled out my shea butter and did my own feet. Yeah, so it was so that was good for me. That was
Good.
good for me. So where we left off last time was in this section where uh, we are in it. It didn't start with you by Mark Wolin, and Mark Wolin, we are still in the section where he is talking about his story. I know Ruth was supposed to pick up her book the other day.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
So good.
uh-huh. And my brother said that he was already through, although he can't necessarily be on here with us because he's usually working, but he was talking about he's already made it through this first section.
I'm
So
curious if people are working the book, like doing the work that is in the book. And I'd love to hear like some feedback if for those who got the book and like just kind of work through it and answer some of the questions like your fear language and some discoveries
uh,
that um
yeah,
that are just so big, like where we left off, where he said, I outgrew my parents. It's like, what?
right, right, right. And
How you
so
do that?
right. And so that's, and that's where I kind of wanted to, like, like as we talk about this thing, when when he says that he outgrew them, and sort of kind of back up and look at that instead. What does that feel like? I mean, because constantly we feel as if we have outpaced to some degree our parents. And what's that based on? um is that based on what we think, how we think that there is a shift in society, as opposed to because sometimes it's like this outgrowth of outgrowing. What do we think that's based on? Do we think it's based on, because I guess here's for me too. There's a difference between wisdom and knowledge or book sense. Because sometimes, people think that because they've gotten more education,
Right.
that
And
somehow
age doesn't make wisdom either.
it does.
Just because you're old doesn't mean that you're wiser, but there is wisdom that comes with life experiences.
Mm-hmm,
That should not be discounted because we're educated. Like that's crazy.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's crazy. And maybe because we're African American, we understand the beauty and the value of motherhood. Because we've done a lot of things without education as a people, a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
And with information being withheld from us, there's been this juicy knowing that is us.
And and some of this comes from just simply being able to pay attention or to listen. That there is a call, there is a vibration, or there is energy, there is all of this that is constantly out there and trying to get its way, trying to get into us. And so many times what we do is we reject that because we think somehow, that somehow we know better, or we don't have to listen to that. Okay, so she says she has the Wolves book, but she's still on the waiting list at the library. Okay.
Okay.
But sometimes, wait a minute. So Erica says, I feel like the more education that Black folks get, the further from God they get. Not all, but a lot. And I don't know. I think that what happened, here's my take on that. I think we have to give ourselves permission to let our understanding of God grow or fluctuate without necessarily releasing the tether.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So if we're trying to stay in the box that was created by what we learned when we were growing up, and that's absolutely a box. If we stay in that box without allowing that box to expand and grow, then yes, people will reject it, right? But when you let your concept of God get bigger as you get bigger, grow as you grow, then I think that that something wonderful happens. You get a different understanding and a different connectedness. I was writing this morning, writing on my book, and one of the things that I started talking about was this idea of how even my relationship has changed through some of the experiences that I've had. Stephanie has heard me talk a lot about when I get assignments from God, right? Sometimes I have been out places and I know that I'm about to, I feel like I'm being dispatched for a particular purpose. So whether it is helping somebody, or the old lady who who was outside at night without, having all of, the kids, there was there's been these instances where I have been put into action or dispatched for a particular purpose. And so one of the things that I was writing about was how it feels as though when you're called on to do something, when you're called on to answer a call, it gives you a different perception about even how prayers are answered. When we pray, we think that, like I don't know if we think that it's God that's going to answer our prayers from up in heaven, or that somebody is sent. And so what I've learned is that we're dispatched. We are the blessing. And to the degree that we can get out of our judgment and out of our, this whole thing, when you get beyond the thoughts about some things, you're dispatched. And your responsibility is to show up and do the task at hand without getting caught up, because my thoughts don't mean anything about this, right? And so it puts you at a different, I think it gives us a different view of how stuff works. So for me, when I read in the Course in Miracles that, all of us are connected, all minds are connected, I keep seeing how that connection operates over and over again. And so I'm not sitting up worrying about where somebody is on their path, whether they're ahead of me or behind me, whether I got something to learn or something like this. This guy saying that I had outgrown my parents. What is that? I mean, that thought in itself is trying to give you a disconnect, right?
Yeah, because it sounds as if he imagined that his parents were primitive, their outdated thinking, their belief system. If I get to do it, I'm going to do it different, as if, they, like, you chose him.
Mm-hmm.
But he probably hadn't gotten there yet on his journey. But though they were there, everything about them was there because that was the journey that you intended to have. So to say you outgrew them is a misnomer. Like, yeah, get back and rethink that. But I thought it was good because I think that people go through that. Of course, I know that people go through this. I deal with this every day. And they discount the value that their caregivers have because of the trauma that they've experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And they discount the value. And then you have some who, anyway, that don't see the trauma as trauma, and then they have a different experience. But they discount the value of a caregiver when there is trauma and, parents that may not have known how to parent appropriately, whatever the heck that is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. And so when you get out of that, it's like, I've outgrown them. Like, I don't need that anymore. I'm beyond the crap they took me through. But
yeah, but not. So, and then Erica says, challenging the historical stuff is fine, but I'm talking about straight out denial. And I'll use the word that Stephanie just used. People have been traumatized by God, or by how their perception of God, because I'm going to tell you, we have been beat up with that darn Bible. I mean, beat up, beat down, taught to deny ourselves, our feelings, our lived experience. People have been abused based on religion. And so, yes, there are people who would just straight out say, not that no more. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of those things like, yeah, I've outgrown that. That's exactly what people will say, because they haven't allowed life to show them that it's not this, but it's,
Yeah. And it's okay. It's like I used to say, there's like kindergarten, middle school, and high school, and they're all essential for the journey. And so I don't want to downplay kindergarten, because I needed that. Right. And so it's like seeing God in a bigger aspect, a different aspect, where I don't need to be entertained where it comes to church and religion. If I did university, where my professors have taught me everything without him and Han and dancing and singing, so now I can sit in a theological conversation without all of the antics. And so you grow out of that. It's just certain things that you just kind of grow out of. And I receive things different from a different performance. My kindergarten teacher is not going to teach me the same way my 12th grade teacher teaches me
Right.
information.
But but that too is the same relationship. Like our little kid self is a different relationship with our adult parents.
It should be.
Adult parents, right?
Should be. Yes.
And so once you get a different perspective, then we have to allow how we engage with God. Like now, my perception about how I participate in this thing called God is totally different than the, oh, please help me, Lord, please, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, because the blessings are not just like, waiting for manna
Coming to come down. Right.
Yeah, just knowing that my blessings come from and through. And if that's the case, then how do I then also participate in being the blessing? So all of that changes when we allow ourselves to have to do the adulting thing, to grow up.
Erica made a really great point, because I remember the shift for myself, and I remember feeling like, well, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And because my uncle was murdered right around the same time that shift happened, and we are a year apart, so he's more like my brother, because my mom had me at 15 years old. So you can create the scenario yourself. So that was my brother. We grew up together and everything. He's a year older than I. And I was just in this transition with religion, and this happened. And I just didn't know what to do. All I could do is love the person who did this. Like, I didn't know nothing else. Like, and I was so confused, because, it's like, get him. But then there's this, no, I love him. Like, I have to have this space of love. I cried all through the trial. He was such a beautiful young man. He's only 19. And my family thought I was crazy, but my heart just wept for him, and I wept for his mom, and I wept for his dad, and just but that was my family was like, and I probably still feel like, what is wrong with her? But only thing I knew to do is love, because I had seen my relationship with the creator had become so different, and right in the nick of time too. I think that's so awesome. Because I could have had a vengeance is mine, says the Lord, I will repay.
Yeah.
But that ain't my business.
Right. It doesn't feel right. And when people try to make it seem as though they need to push their way of seeing, or their way of being, or even their way of determining, interpreting scripture on you, sometimes it's just like, oh, that's, that don't feel good. I had a friend of mine, good morning, Michael. I had a friend of mine who said, she had posted up this thing on the thing, on her page, and it said something like, what's not included in the Bible is your opinion, right? And I had to ask her about that. I called her and asked her about it. Like, what does that mean? And she was like, well, your opinion ain't in the Bible. And I said, well,
okay,
what book other than my own book would it be in? I'm trying to figure out, like, is my opinion in any other book other than the one I'm writing? And so I'm just sitting there like, like, let me just kind of,
that's a great question,
figure out what it is that was supposed to mean for you. And so,
well, did you get an answer? Because I'm curious.
Well, I think that she was just kind of sitting up there trying to say again that your opinion ain't in there. And I was like, okay, it's not in any book except for the book I'm working on. That's just what I kept coming back to. Like, And so with everything, we bring
Bring
ourselves to
meaning.
it,
Yeah.
right? We bring ourselves to it. And what happens is that blame, shame, that guilt, and all of that stuff that has other people beating us back with it, trying to say that we've got to be a particular way or feel a particular thing, that vengeance and that warrior type mentality, all of
Mhm.
that stuff, we get to bring who we are, our own truth to it. So are we being Martha, trying to shake our fingers at somebody and tell them what to do? Or are we being Mary, and just trying to bring our love into the situation without all of that other judgmental stuff? And that becomes our choice all the time. Who are we going to be? How
Are
are we going
you?
to show up, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of that
Yeah.
stuff. It gets to be our choice. So when he was told to go home, right? Go home, this guy was saying, I was livid. How dare you try to send me home? Like,
Those people.
yeah, yeah. And so he was talking about how angry he got, and he says, clearly he misread me. I no longer needed my parents. This is what he's saying here. I had outgrown them. I had given up on them a long time ago, traded them in for better parents. That's deep, right? Traded them in for better parents, divine parents, spiritual parents, all the teachers, gurus, men, women that were guiding me to the next level of his awakening. He had traded in his parents for all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But this wonderful, wonderful dispatcher, this wonderful God gave you already the perfect teachers, the perfect gurus, the perfect family in which we are to come into our real selves, our true self.
Yeah.
And so he says, what's more is, with several years of misguided therapy under my belt, he says, and beating on pillows and tearing cardboard effigies of his parents to smithereens, he says, I believed I had already healed my relationship with them, and I decided to ignore the advice.
So let me just say,
Yes.
for all of us, if you have not exonerated someone that you have an offense with, you have not healed. If you haven't gotten to a place of exoneration where you have become empathetic
Mm-hmm.
to another person's journey, you haven't healed from it. Doesn't mean you got to be in fellowship, doesn't mean you got to be kissy huggy, but exoneration is healing.
So sometimes when one of the things that I've found is that sometimes when we feel as if, and I'll use the word forgiveness, sometimes we do forgiveness from this lofty kind of position.
Bias. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that is not about what has actually happened at all. It's as if, well, I was told I got to forgive you, and so I'm going to, because I'm a better person. I'm this
I'm
person.
gonna take the high road.
Yeah, and so I'm going to forgive you, right? Without really getting a deeper understanding about yourself through what has happened.
Mm-hmm.
Part of me takes offense to this. What part of me, and I'll use the example that you guys are all probably familiar with, because I talk about this so often. My dad and me. My dad used to my dad had a mantra, like, why ain't you married? Why can't you get married? Why can't you find a husband? I thought I raised you to. I blah, blah, blah about a husband, a husband, a husband, a husband, a husband. And I really wanted that to stop being the that sticking point that just used to get on my last nerve, right? It was always one of those things that it was like nails on a chalkboard. It inhibited my ability to connect with and relate to my dad, because he was always talking about this and it wasn't my thing. It was not going to, but I needed to get past it. And so I kept praying about it, because what I know that, one of the things that they said all the time is you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? And so I knew that I wasn't going to be able to change my dad. So I kept praying about it. And what I heard was, or what I started to see is my dad's perspective. God was showing me that my father's perspective is that a woman needed to be covered by somebody, that I needed somebody to take care and to look out for me like he did. And I saw how he cared for my mother. I saw how he cared for my grandmother. I saw how he cared for other people. And what I saw when I saw this, I was seeing it from the perspective of this is my dad. When he says to me, he's not looking at me as if I'm inadequate. He's looking at me and saying, I want for you to make sure that you are covered when I'm no longer able to cover you. So every time I heard my dad from when I started to get that glimpse, instead of hearing the criticism, why can't you find a husband? Why aren't you married? Why don't you this? Why don't you that? Instead of hearing that, I kept hearing, Sandy, I love you. Sandy, I love you so much that I need this for you. Sandy, this is my comfort level and I want this for you because I love you that much. So what he said didn't change, but how it landed on me.
Yes.
And so I got a level of compassion and understanding for him, because that's what that meant. That's what he was saying. So this thing so it wasn't just me forgiving my dad, because that's the easy part. But having the transformation in your spirit to how you then hear them.
And there would be no need for forgiveness.
Right. And that's what the Course in Miracles says, is that when you get to that point, you don't even need to forgive it anymore.
Not a thing. So
and say, for instance, if your parents are long gone and you haven't made that switch in consciousness, it's not too late.
No, it's necessary.
This stuff happens retroactively. So if you've got something that has been the sticking point of why you felt like you couldn't understand or relate to your parents, start now, right here, with the problems that you had. Bring the issue up and feel it. I mean, because this was coming from a place of, oh my God, I can't tell you. My brothers used to avoid my dad because they always felt like, he was criticizing him, or that somehow he didn't, value them or honor them, or, what's the other thing that they wanted, my dad to be proud of them, and they never felt that. And I'm sitting up there saying, the transformation is yours to do, right? I didn't need to change my dad. I needed to change me.
And it's a learning, it's an it's getting to understand that as I grew older and was doing this work, my mom was 15 years old So the criticism wasn't even about me. It was about her. And, if I look at my family dynamics, if I wasn't good, if I wasn't calm, if I wasn't okay, then it was a reflection of her ability to be a good parent at 15.
Mhm.
So there's a level of anxiety that comes with our relationship because she was trying to prove something to, she was a daddy's girl. So she had a whole lot of stuff going on. If you can just imagine what that's like to have this child be 15. And she was my grandfather's firstborn and his only daughter. And there's so many dynamics and so many things, ideas about my mother's self that she had to now reconcile because she is very articulate. She loves to read, and she was supposed to be an English teacher, and she went off to do some other things because now she had to take care of a child. But all of that. So the criticism was not even about me. The criticism was always about her, and it still is always. And now I know that, and it doesn't impact me like it used to, but for years, I mean years, even into my marriage relationships, criticism was like, and I was never an arguer about it. I was always fixing, changing, modifying, until one day it was like, I ain't modifying nothing. I'm good. And then
Right,
that became an area
right,
of growth, and you had to start to say, no, I'm good. You like I love white shirts, and you notice I don't wear them much anymore because it would always be like, you need to put an apron on, you need to put something on. And now she'll go, do you want to get a towel? You want a towel? Do you want a towel? Like before I eat, do I want a towel put in front of my shirt, And I'm like, nope, I'm good. I can buy another one. I got a ton of these in my closet. I'm good. So she chuckles now, but it used to be offensive. Like, dog, do you think every time, you know, when there was a white shirt or so, but she's still the same way. She's not changed,
right,
and
right.
now it don't tag me the same way that it used to, because I understand it was all in love, and I understood that she had to get okay with her choices that she made, and that it was important for her to look like an excellent mom, and
Mm.
to look good in her father's eyes after this so-called blunder. But God's will is perfect. Look at me. Like, this was not a blunder. This is a major blessing to the planet. But at the time, she could not see that.
But and that's going back to what Erica had said earlier. That's that beat up that we do with what we think is good and right. Not the kids are, children are born, they come into this world, and it's almost like this by divine appointment, and we want to make them wrong and the situation wrong, and we want to call people bastard children, or we want to
Mhm.
make it seem like there's something inherently wrong in them, rather than just saying, wow, you know what, you must have been destined to be. As a matter of fact, my brother named my brother and his wife, ex-wife, named their youngest Destined, because it was like Destined is what he was.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
was, one of those things, like you were saying, he was supposed to be here,
Mhm.
right? And the circumstances around it may not have seemed ideal at the time, but he was
Right.
supposed to be here. And
Yeah.
to continuously be in that space like something is wrong.
It's like trudging through mud.
You say what?
It's like trudging through mud, like a lifetime of just struggling to find your attaboy space where it's just a consistent place of I'm good,
Right,
when you're not when you don't understand from the beginning that intrinsically you are good.
right. And so, it becomes this thing of just being able to be in a space of like, wow, this must be what was supposed to happen all along. And so, just getting past this, because when we tell when people speak to our children and say that you were a mistake, what is
Mhm.
that to say? Well, a mistake for who?
Devastating.
Right?
Yeah.
A mistake for who? And so, yeah, we gotta, some of that stuff, all that judgmental stuff we gotta get out of. It's time for us to go.
Yes, it is. But this was good.
Um, yeah, because and so we kind of we didn't necessarily progress, but just a little bit. But it's okay. It is what it is. And that's all it is. So so tomorrow we will pick up right there. I appreciate this. I appreciate this whole conversation. Yeah, let me go get me some butter myself up.
I have tons of shea butter too, so I am a shea butter fanatic.
Yeah, it's interesting because that woman, Nanandi Okofor, if you wasn't a shea butter person, she will sure make you one. And she kind of, the smell of it, the feel of it, she just kind of elevates that to a whole nother level. And it's just like, okay, let me go give me some butter. She was talking about how her character in this book that I'm reading, it was like this woman had been living out in the wilderness, in the woods for, I don't know, 6 months or something like that. And this tour bus, she ended up somehow out on the road because she was running from something. And this tour bus stopped and they recognized her. And she says people were giving her clothes and food and bottles of water and all of this stuff. They were just like, they saw her and they was just trying to like, oh man, you look like you've been through some stuff. And so they started giving her all of this stuff. And she said that this lady even gave her a bag to put all of this stuff in, the clothes and the stuff that they gave her. And then she says, and this man came out with a jar of shea butter. And she says, and he was about to hand me the shea butter, and he took it and he opened it up and he got a little scoop out, put the top back on it and gave me the jar. And she says, I understand. He had to get some before he gave it away. But it's just so funny because there's another woman who is Nigerian too, and she writes a lot about shea butter. It's so hilarious to me.
That's good. That's their like the Greek Windex. Remember that movie, the Big Fat my Big Fat Greek
my
Wedding?
Big Fat Greek Wedding. Yes, Windex on everything.
Windex.
I wonder if anybody else has anything that they swear by. I mean, because it's funny to me just to see what comes into people and their writing and their awareness. Like when I think about staples of things that you always have to have on, right? Mm-hmm. What would be yours, Stephanie? You got some staples?
I don't know. I have to think about it. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, I do have food staples. I do have.
Yeah, used to be Ritz crackers had to be in the house, and peanut butter.
Okay,
but that's not a thing anymore because I don't really do bread. So I have to think. I don't know. I don't know. Definitely some kind of emollient. But I use hemp lotion now and shea butter like mixed together. So good. But I don't know if it's like been a staple my whole life, but I've been using it since 2015, 14, mixing them together. I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure I have them like everybody else, especially cleaning supplies.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and it's just so interesting because there are certain things that I know that it just don't seem right unless I have. But yeah, it is hilarious to me just to read and to pay attention to other people and their perceptions around stuff. Yeah. Okay. All right. So
good people.
Thank you for
Monday.
Yes, have an amazing Monday. Good. I had black eyed peas on New Year's, Winnie. I did.
Did
Look,
too.
and when you're talking about that, one of the things I try to keep, I keep pasta on hand, I keep heavy cream on hand, and I keep frozen shrimp on hand. That's just
Mm-hmm.
that's stuff that and cream for my coffee, but that's stuff that I always have. But baby oil is something that I never
Yeah.
myself run out of.
Yeah, baby oil. That's
Yeah,
yeah, that's one. What is that? I don't know, but
it's just like, yes, I
that
can't.
is so good. That's true. Yeah, baby
And
oil.
Q-tips.
And Q-tips. Yep.
Q-tips. I had a guy, I had a guy who I met in, wait a minute, it's not even in college. When I was in Italy, I met this guy. He was from Boston and I'm from Ohio. So it wasn't even somebody that I was always around. But when he contacted me to say, hey, are you the Sandra Bishop that was in Italy? I said, yes, right. I was like, yes. And he says, and you always had Q-tips? I had to laugh because I was thinking to myself, and will not accept an off brand. Will not accept an off brand. No knockoffs. I would have Q-tips shipped from the United States to
Oh my.
Italy because they had to be they had to be Q-tips. I got Q-tips.
Oh,
And it's hilarious because
that is a thing.
yeah, when I was growing up, I used to get ear infections all the time. And so my ears itch, especially when I get sleepy. And so I have a Q-tip. I mean, I carry Q-tips with me places. I'm always, yes. And so he was like, so way back in 1990 over in Italy, people knew me for some darn Q-tips.
Q-tips. There you
Yeah.
go. That's your shea butter. All right. I gotta go.
All right.
All
All right.
right. See you
Thank
guys. Love you. Deep
you,
file. Deep file.
deep bow to you. All right, y'all. So we are out of here for today. I appreciate you being here. I know we kind of meandered down a couple of different blocks today, but hopefully, as you go through this, think about whatever issues you may have had with your parents. Something that you still need to let go of, and or something that used to cause you some level of disagreement or angst, anxiety, and it still might, right? But let's do some work around those issues, right? If what needs to happen is you need to pray for an understanding about some of the criticism or some of the feedback that you've received growing up. What is it that we need to work through? What is it that you can work through? And me being supportive of that. What is it that we can transform so that you can get to the place where you see that you were destined, you were the exact person that was supposed to be born into that family. And sometimes it is just that little thing, finding that thing that was most egregious to you, that helps open you up to all the other stuff, all the possibilities of seeing your parents different. And we have to also look at it in context. What did they grow out of? What kind of situations and things did they see? What did they grow out of? So whether your parents were from the South or whether they were right here from the North, the kind of environmental issues that had them see the world in the way that they do, and the desire to prepare you for this world the way that they did. All of that stuff is stuff that we can we can work through. We can get a feel around it and then figure out how to work through it. So those things are, I tell you, when I say that, this is the work that we're doing. Yeah. And if you want to send me a message about it, I appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate it. I'll read my messages at some point during the day. But yes, let's be about this business of healing this stuff, right? uh, and it's our work to do. It's not theirs. Because, that's what I knew. I wasn't going to change my dad, but I could change me. That's the only thing I can do. Right? That's the only thing I could do. And I don't know what all that noise is. All right, y'all. So blessings to you. I love you. And yeah, and I'll be here tomorrow, same time, like 7:30-ish. And all is well. All right, take care. Oh, Lynn is in town. Ah, oh, good, 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 good. I wonder, does she have anything that she's got, that this contentious between you guys? I mean, parenting, this dynamic between um us and our parents is always interesting. And then, yeah, and then just kind of like looking at, what it is that, you know, I don't know, is it something, I don't even know how to describe it. I know that even when I look at other people and their relationship to their parents, it always seems like there's some kind of um, place of friction in those relationships. So whether it is, sometimes my mother would talk to me about my weight, and it's just like, woman, get off of me. I didn't say it like that, but it was, there were points in time in the relationship that were always a challenge. So whether or not, and believe it or not, it's progressive. And I'm just talking on, I'm rattling now. Uh, there was a time at which I remember my mother telling me that I had to pretend that men didn't like women who were too smart. So I might be better served by acting a little dumb every once in a while. It's out of love. All right, y'all, I'm gone. I'll see you tomorrow. Blessings to you.